Second is this AIS, right? And let's talk about the telco industry because it is one of the big telco in Thailand. And you know that every country there is typically a few big players. It's just like in Singapore, there are 4 players, right? In fact, it's mandated by law. Okay, we can only have 4 players, the max. And this Thailand telco industry, right, used to have more players, but over the years, they are left with just 2. Okay, it becomes a duopoly. Yes, there are more than 2 players, but they are so small that they are very insignificant. Why would I say so? Right. So the 2 big ones is AIS, which is the stock that we're looking at right now, and the other one is True Corporation. Okay. And we can analyze the telco industry looking at 2 kinds of services. The first is the mobile services, which is like your handphone, right? Handphone plan. And the second is FBB, stands for fixed broadband. Okay, this is your fiber, your internet access at home. So these are the 2 markets that we are looking at. So in terms of the first one, the mobile market, the number 1 market share is True Corporation, which has 53%. Okay, and in fact, it was because they merged 2 companies together, True as well as DTech. Okay, prior to that, they are separate companies. And if they're separate companies, their market share is smaller than AIS then. But because they merged together, now their market share, combined market share, increased to 53%. And AIS is number 2 now with 47%. So it's about half-half, right? The market is split into 2. Okay, as I said, the rest not important, right? Because add up together, you're talking about what 47 plus 53 is almost 100%, right? The top 2 market share is 100%. Okay, then we look at the fixed broadband market share. AIS, I think last year or 2 years ago, they acquired 3BB. Okay, so 3BB had 22.3% market share. AIS had 22.5% market share. So add together, now they have combined 44.8% market share, and that propelled AIS to be number 1. And the second is True plus DTech, which is 36.9. Again, if you add the total market share of the top 2 players, we are looking at how many? 44.8 plus 36, 7, 80, more than 80%. More than 80% in the top 2 players. Oh, here, 81.7%. Okay, so that tells us that it's a duopoly. Okay, there are just 2 companies. That is important in the entire Thai telecom industry. So, which means our comparison of telco stocks will be between just AIS and True Corporation. That's it. Okay, because there's no other contender that we need to worry about. And in fact, being big in broadband may be a better situation, right? Why? Because the growth area again is small, right? The broadband penetration in Thailand is just 60%. Not like Singapore. Singapore is also very saturated, right? Fiber, I don't know, I don't have the figures. I would expect about 80-90%. But in Thailand, the broadband take-up rate is just more than half, right? You still have a very big gain to come, right? The next 20%, the next 30% to boost the broadband adoption to close to 100. Okay, so there's definitely more growth area. While mobile is more than 100%, which means that is the 1 person has more than 1 line. Okay, and I believe that some of you might be in that situation, right? You have more than 1 mobile line. Okay, so that is how the penetration increased more than population size. So the growth area definitely is lower, right? It's more mature, more stable, but broadband is where the growth is. So AIS buying 3BB looks like a good decision, right? It will help them cement their leadership and get the growth more readily. So as I said, we just need to compare AIS versus True Corporation because these are the only 2 telcos that matters in Thailand. In terms of market cap, AIS is bigger, almost more than double, right? Revenue is about more or less the same. Okay, AIS is slightly smaller. Okay, but in terms of ROE, ROA, and P ratio, right? There's nothing to compare because only AIS is the one that's profitable. True Corporation has been making losses. So you can't have ROE, ROA computed when your earnings is negative, right? In fact, True Corporation had 3 years of consecutive losses. Okay, it seems like in terms of operation metrics, AIS is definitely much more superior. And because they are making profits, hence they can give dividends as well. Whereas True Corporation can't afford to give dividends. So it is very clear, right, that AIS is the better stock here, without doubt. Okay. And something to note is that even though just now we talk about, yeah, broadband got growth area, but at the end of the day, telco is a mature industry. It's not just in Thailand, but in Singapore, in everywhere in the world, growth rate is not as fast as before anymore, right? If you look at AIS, the past 5-year revenue growth rate is just 2% per year. It's not very impressive. It's just growing, in fact, slower than the Thailand GDP. And the net profit is not growing, it's just flat. Okay, so definitely it's a sign of a mature company. It is not like a growth stock like what we saw in Delta Thailand. Okay, of course, slow growth comes with other advantage, which is the stock tends to be more stable. They tend to distribute more dividends. That's why the dividend yield is higher, right? You can get a 4.1% dividend yield with AIS, but you can only get what 0.6% with Delta Thailand. Because Delta Thailand is more of a growth stock, not a dividend stock. Mature company can afford to give more dividends, hence the yields are higher. And you can see that this is the free cash flow per year because dividends are paid out from free cash flow. A company that doesn't have free cash flow cannot pay dividend. Not that cannot, right? Just that they probably have to borrow money somewhere or use their old stash to distribute dividends. So having that consistency of free cash flow is very important, right? Especially for dividends. And they have distributed dividends every year, again, including COVID. And after declining for some years, it finally increase again. Okay. And this is the price multiple comparison. Again, PS ratio, P ratio, free cash flow yield, dividend yield. I will not use the 5-year average actually. Okay, I'll use the standard deviation, right? Because you need to be more conservative for stocks, or you need to have more margin of safety for stock that are not growing. Okay, because their stock price will not increase like this. Maybe a stock price is more stagnant, okay, or more range bound, right? And therefore, you want to buy at lower prices, lower end of the ranges, okay, rather than buying at the average. That would be more aggressive, right? A growth stock is different. You can pay a fair price, it's still okay because the future share price will increase if you get the fundamentals right. Okay, so that is how I look at things. So I will only use -1 +1 standard deviation for mature company like this. So comparing the PS ratio 3.2x versus its 5-year average, or no, 5-year standard deviation is -1 standard deviation is higher, right? That suggests more expensive. PE ratio also higher, which is more expensive. Free cash flow yield is lower, which means it's more expensive. And dividend yield is also lower, which also means that it's more expensive. So AIS is actually not undervalued in my view now. Right? But this can be some ranges that you can look out for. Right? If the yield goes up to about 5+%, it is undervalued. Okay, so then you can look at opportunities like this. Right? But this is my sharing. This is how I would compare or value the stock. You may have different methods. And this is the AIS shareholders because I think that it's also good to let you know, right? In touch is the Taksin company, the ex-PM of Thailand, and Singtel, right? The biggest telco in Singapore has a 23% stake. Okay, last time Temasek used to have a stake, but it created some hoo-ha in Thailand, and I don't know whether is it because it was bought through Singtel, right? Because Temasek has stakes in Singtel, so indirectly Temasek have stake in this Thai telco, because telco is a very sensitive industry. It's strategic to a country. Because in times of conflict or war, right, communication is key, and you do not want someone who is a foreign entity to own your communication infrastructure, right? But it's been there, right? I think that has been a big shareholder for a long time.